We've all heard the story of Atlantis, right? This incredible, magnificent civilization that just vanished into the sea. It's a legend that's fascinated people for centuries. But what if the most detailed, the most specific account of Atlantis didn't come from some ancient scroll, but from the mind of a man who was fast asleep in the 20th century? All right, let's get into this, because it's a deeply strange and fascinating story.
So, just so we're all on the same page, everything we're about to dive into comes from this one source. It's a book that pulls together all these psychic readings that Edgar Cayce gave over more than 20 years. And believe me, the picture it paints of Atlantis is unlike anything you've ever heard before.
And this is really the heart of the mystery, isn't it? It's the one question that makes this whole thing so incredibly compelling. How could a guy, seemingly unconscious, just lying on a couch, come up with such a rich, complex, and consistent history of a world that's been lost for millennia?
To really wrap our heads around the story, we first have to understand the storyteller. So, who in the world was Edgar Cayce?
Well, by all accounts, in his normal waking life, Cayce was a pretty ordinary man. He was a photographer, a husband, a father, a Sunday school teacher. But when he put himself into this deep, self-induced trance, something else took over. He could apparently tap into this universal source of information, giving these incredibly detailed readings for thousands of different people.
Now here's what makes this so wild. His own family, his son, the people who studied him for years, they all insisted on one thing. The conscious, awake Edgar Cayce knew nothing about Atlantis. He hadn't read Plato, he wasn't some history buff obsessed with lost civilizations. And yet, when he was asleep, he could describe it in unbelievable detail. Okay, so let's get to the good stuff. What did Cayce see? What was this world he described? Well, it wasn't some primitive society, not even close. He painted a picture of a civilization that, in many ways, was even more advanced than our own. I mean, just listen to this quote from one of the readings. He's talking about machines that fly through the air and under the water. He's talking about long-range communications and radioactive forces. And you have to remember, he was saying this in the 1920s and 30s, long before most of this was a reality for us.
It's staggering when you see it all laid out like this. Flying machines, submarines, television, remote control, even atomic energy, and get this, crystal power sources. These are all things that would have sounded like absolute science fiction to anyone hearing it at the time.
And the centerpiece of all their technology was this thing he called the Firestone. You can think of it like their main power plant. It was this enormous crystal, housed in a special building with a retractable dome that could draw in energy from the sun and the stars and then broadcast it wirelessly to power their entire civilization. Just incredible.
But for all their scientific genius, Atlantean society was completely fractured. Their downfall wasn't from some outside invader. Nope, it was a war of ideals that rotted them out from the inside. Basically, their society was split into two camps. On one side, you had the Sons of the Law of One. You can think of them as the spiritually minded group. They believed in the sanctity of the soul and using all their knowledge for the good of everyone. And on the other side, you had the Sons of Belial. These guys are all about materialism, power, and satisfying their own selfish desires. So what was the big flashpoint? It was their treatment of a group the readings just call the Things. These were beings that were almost like biological robots or androids designed to do manual labor. The Sons of Belial saw them as property, as slaves to be exploited, and this created a massive ethical rift in their society.
And you can probably guess where this is going. This deep spiritual and moral divide led the Sons of Belial to misuse their incredible technology, and the results were absolutely catastrophic for the whole continent.
But here's the thing. The end didn't happen all at once. According to Cayce, it was a long, slow-motion train wreck that took place in 3 major phases, over tens of thousands of years. The first destruction was an accident from misusing their power crystals. The second literally broke their continent apart into a bunch of islands. And that final cataclysm, around 10,000 BC, that's the one we've all heard about, when the last piece of Atlantis, an island called Posidia, finally sank for good.
But not everyone died. The good guys, the Sons of the Law of One, they saw what was coming. And before the final end, refugees managed to escape, taking their records, their knowledge, and their wisdom with them to other parts of the world. Most importantly, to what would become ancient Egypt and Central America.
So you might think the story ends there, in the distant past, but it doesn't. And this next part is where this ancient history supposedly crashes right into our modern world in a very, very personal way. This might just be the single most shocking claim in all of the Cayce readings. This idea that the story of Atlantis isn't just history, it's our history.
Let that sink in. In the thousands of individual life readings Cayce gave, he apparently found that an astonishing number of them, close to 50%, had a direct past life connection to Atlantis.
The core idea here is reincarnation. The readings propose that the very same souls from both sides of the conflict, the sons of the Law of One and the sons of Belial, are all being reborn today. They're coming back now to face the same choices and the same conflicts they left unfinished thousands of years ago.
And this is the part that's supposed to explain, well, a lot about our modern world. The insane explosion of technology, the massive social upheaval, the deep, deep spiritual divides we see everywhere. The reading suggests that this is all being driven by the reemergence of these highly advanced and highly conflicted Atlantean souls.
So, these souls are coming back with all their old baggage. They're bringing their incredible talents for sure, both for good and for ill. But they're also bringing back old grudges and unresolved karma. And once again, as a planet, we're facing that exact same choice that destroyed Atlantis. Will we use our amazing power for selfish gain or for the good of all?
When you really step back and look at the whole epic story, you start to see that it's not just a fantasy tale. The way it's presented in the Cayce material, it's a direct parable, a warning for our own time.
The ultimate takeaway is a timeless one, really. It's a massive cautionary tale. It says that if your technological power grows and grows, but your ethics, your morality, your spiritual wisdom doesn't grow along with it, you're on a fast track to disaster. You're just building a fancier way to destroy yourself.
And that leaves us all with a pretty provocative final question to think about. In our own world, with all its amazing technology and all its deep divisions, which path are we choosing, personally and collectively? Are we on the path of service and the greater good, or the path of power and self-interest? According to this story, that choice is the only one that truly matters.